We all know rhubarb and custard is a classic flavour combination, but have you ever tried it in a donut? If you haven't, this is exactly how you do it. To begin this recipe, I've got 75 millilitres of whole full fat milk, and we need to warm it through. So I'm going to pour it into a saucepan and then over a low heat until it's just steaming. Then I'm going to remove it from the heat and leave it to cool back down to room temperature. So now we can pour that back into the jug. And if it has reduced down at all, you can just top it up with a splash of cold milk. I'll leave that to one side to cool and we'll move on to the rest of the recipe. So I've got 250 grams of strong white bread flour and we're going to place that into the bowl of a stand mixer. I recommend using a stand mixer for this recipe because we have to slowly incorporate quite a lot of ingredients, and if you're kneading it by hand it might be quite tricky. It's not impossible, but I do think a stand mixer is recommended for this recipe. Into the bowl add the bread flour, 35 grams of caster sugar, a quarter teaspoon of salt and 7 grams of fast action dried yeast. And then mix those ingredients together using a spoon. And now with the mixer running on low, we're going to gradually pour in the milk and add 2 eggs. Now I've cracked these into a bowl beforehand because if you crack them straight into the mixture and some shell goes in, you're going to struggle to get it back out. You can now turn the mixer up to a medium speed and leave it to knead and mix the dough for about 10 minutes until the dough becomes smooth and elastic. So after that first mix, your dough should look something like this. And I say first mix because the next stage we need to incorporate 60 grams of soft unsalted butter. So I'm going to place this back into the mixer. Obviously you don't need to take it out of the mixer like I have. I'm just doing that to show the camera. And we're going to gradually incorporate 60 grams of soft unsalted butter and leave it to knead for a further 5 minutes. So once you've incorporated the butter, you should have a nice, smooth and elastic looking dough that's slightly shiny, and it looks just like this. So next we're going to lightly oil a bowl, place the dough in it, cover it and leave it in a warm place for 1 hour to rise. After 1 hour your dough should have doubled in size. We can now take it from the bowl and divide it into 8 equal sized portions. If you want them to be exactly the same size, weigh the dough beforehand and then divide it by 8 and then weigh them out to that size. Roll the dough into balls and then place them onto a tray lined with parchment paper. And then firmly press each one down with your fingers until it's nice and flat. This is to stop it rising up into a sphere shape. Cover with a clean cloth and leave them to rise for a further 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes your dough should have risen again, and now we're ready to cook them. So I've got a large pan and I'm going to place that over a medium heat and fill it halfway with oil that is suitable for deep frying. Heat the oil to 165 degrees Celsius. You can check this using the temperature probe, and then gently place in your donuts in batches. Cook them for 3 minutes on each side until nice and golden. Once they're cooked, place them onto a board lined with kitchen paper just to absorb any excess oil. Now while our donuts are still warm, we just need to dust them in some caster sugar. So I've just got some plain caster sugar here in a bowl, and I'm simply just going to roll the donuts around in them until they're fully coated, and then place them onto a wire rack to cool completely. Now I could eat these delicious looking donuts just like that, but we're not going to do that. We're going to make some fillings and we're going to turn these into delicious rhubarb and custard donuts. So I'll begin by making a creme patisserie or a pastry cream or a thick custard, whatever you want to call it, and then a rhubarb puree. And to do that, place 4 medium egg yolks into a mixing bowl with 65 grams of caster sugar, 15 grams of plain flour, 15 grams of corn flour and half a teaspoon of vanilla paste or extract. Whisk the ingredients together until they're well combined and pale in colour, and then place 350 millilitres of whole milk into a saucepan. Heat it up over low heat until just before boiling, and then remove it from the heat. Pour half of the milk into the egg mixture and whisk until fully incorporated. Then pour the egg mixture into the remaining milk back into the pan and back over the heat and whisk until it thickens up. Remove from the heat. Pass it through a sieve to make sure there's no lumps, and then place it into a mixing bowl and then press a sheet of greaseproof paper or cling film onto the surface to stop it forming a skin. Leave it at room temperature to cool for 10 minutes and then place it into the fridge to cool completely. For our rhubarb puree, roughly chop 200 grams of rhubarb and place it into a saucepan. Then add in 75 grams of caster sugar and 20 milliliters of water. Place it over a low heat and stew down until the rhubarb is completely soft and the sugar creates a syrup. This will take roughly around 10 minutes. Remove it from the heat, blend it until smooth, pass it through a sieve and leave it to cool completely. Next we need to make holes in our donuts for our filling to go into. So to do this I'm using a chopstick and I'm just simply inserting it into the donut and then wiggling it around a little bit to make a little pocket inside for our filling. If you don't have a chopstick, you could use the handle of a teaspoon or a small knife to do this. Place your pastry cream and your rhubarb puree into 2 separate piping bags. And then we're going to begin by cutting the ends of our piping bags nice and small. Begin with the rhubarb puree and go around each donut and place some into the centre. And then go around again with the custard and top it up right to the top. So there you have it, homemade rhubarb and custard donuts. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.